In this episode, I'll take you for a little walk outside as I go visit my horses one evening. I'll talk about the joyfulness of having horses, gratitude, and we'll also talk a bit about the importance of introducing variety into your horse's life. All right, so here we go. Episode 82, Walking and Talking. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. It's Monday afternoon. Just finished drizzling a little bit. The horses are all fed. And I just wanted to share with you, I just got back from buying a new mane and tail comb for my horses. Just taking it out of the bag, and I just wanted to share with you this story of what happened when I bought this new mane and tail comb. So I'm in Tractor Supply and just in there doing other errands, dog treats and a few other items. And I remembered that my mane and tail comb handle broke. So I went to the section, I found it, and as I picked it up, I noticed this big smile coming over my face. And it just felt so joyful as I picked out this mane comb, and there were a couple choices. And I chose this one, looked sturdy. And I sat there for a second looking at this mane comb going, why am I grinning so much? And what happened was there was just this wave of instantly being transported back to when I bought my first mane and tail comb for my horse. And it's like all in this flash, I had this sensation of there I was, 12 years old, picking out a mane and tail comb for my first horse. And this instant feeling of oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing ever since then. Ever since I was 12. I've been pretty much doing the same thing. I've been waking up excited to go out and see my horse. So I thought I'd take you with me as I walked out to see my girls and brush their manes with my new mane comb. But I'm just filled with this gratitude of how lucky am I to be at this age. This is, let's see, at the time of recording this podcast, this is 43 years, 44 years after buying my first mane comb. I'm buying this mane comb. I'm heading out with a big grin on my face, excited to comb my horse's manes and tails. So how lucky am I to have had this dream and this hobby and this passion, and to be able to be still doing it, to still be jumping out of bed. And that alone is something to be grateful for. But also, maybe just looking at current events in the world, like what a spectacular luxury it is to have a life where most of my focus is on horses and what mane comb I'm going to buy, or even just training them. I just have this sense of like what a supreme luxury that is, and how fortunate am I. So just in Tractor Supply in Ocala, reaching out for a mane comb, this is what washed over me. And sometimes when I feel a moment like that, those are those magic moments in life that come unexpectedly and that are often missed. And so I always feel like if there's a moment of intuition or a moment of joy or a moment of unexpected realization, I try to stay there just a little bit longer. It'd be easy to brush it off, just smile, good, on to the next thing, get up to the register, and miss that moment. And so whatever you focus on, wherever you put your attention, you're going to get more of that. You're going to head more in that direction. So there I was, grinning like, I don't know what. I was going to say like an idiot, but no, I'm not grinning like an idiot. I'm grinning like a joyful person who's still so in love with horses that she gets excited to buy a mane comb. Hi, Natia. So I'm out with Natia. Hi. Hi, sweetie. So my girls are out on they live on a little dirt track. Actually, it's not that little. It goes around about a 5-acre field. And it's got woods and sun and all different things. Hi, sweetie. Best sound in the world. Horses eating hay. Yeah. She's like, why are you brushing my mane and tail out here? And she says, oh, I'm not going to ask why, because that feels good. Oh, sweet girl. Yep. Sometimes these simple pleasures, these little chores, how many hundreds, thousands of times have I brushed a horse's tail? Often just to get it brushed so it looks good for a picture or a video. But to not take that for granted, just because I do it all the time. Often I have other people brushing my horse's tails for me. But again, what a simple pleasure. In the middle of everything, in the middle of all the business that I do, all the focus on getting content out to you guys and how am I going to keep creating content? Sometimes just simply brushing that tail. And how often do we overlook the things that are really at the heart of everything? This is what gets me up. This is what makes me create new videos and strive at different levels. Because at the end, it's just the time that I spend with my horses that's the fulfilling part. Everything else is just icing on the cake. Oh, hi, Solana. Hi, sweet girl. Hello. Solana has now come away from her hay net to say hello. Hi, gorgeous. Hi, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Oh my goodness. She's now picking up her foot like a little jambette. Oh, really? Hi, are you proud of yourself? She's very talkative. Solana gets very proud of herself. She often, when I come up to her, she'll puff all up and maybe even offer like a little jambette or school halt. Oh, are you beautiful? Now she's smiling with her lips. Hi. Hi. Oh my goodness. So good. Hi, here you go. I actually do have a cookie in my pocket. You're right. So they're out here on the track, and I mentioned she just walked away from her hay net. I realize that's actually something that's worth talking about. I know there's a lot of discussion about feeding horses from hay nets versus on the ground, things like that. And my girls are on a dirt track because the grass here in Ocala is just amazing. But they both have had a history of some laminitis. And Natia is quite on the plump side. It's really challenging to keep her weight ideal. So they're on the dirt track, and they get access to the grass in the mornings, and then they're in by around 10. But so I feed them hay. So they have a low NSC hay, Tifton 85 or Jigs is what I can get, and I've been super happy with how that is. And there's my filly also stays on the track with them the second half of the day. In the mornings, my filly also gets to sometimes, well, all the horses get to go out in the main area on the grass together as a herd. And then in the late morning, my two big girls go back on the track, and then Cora either stays on the track with them or goes and hangs out with either combination of the boys in the main area, or sometimes she goes out in a pasture by herself. So I try to give her a lot of different situations so she can be okay in lots of different situations. Anyway, so we figure out the right amount of hay per 24-hour period that will keep their weight good, and then we divide that into different hay nets throughout the day. So in the late morning when they go back on the track, there's 4 hay nets worth of hay, and then in the evening they get 6 hay nets worth of hay. 3 go out at feeding time, and the other 3 I put out late at night right before bedtime. Anyway, so that's the story of my hay nets. But, Solana's yawning now. I taught her to yawn on cue, and now she's doing that as a trick. That's a nice thing to offer. So anyway, I have heard some debate about whether it's okay to feed horses out of the hay net because of the posture of their neck. So here's my thinking, my observations. I have not observed any weird postures coming from them from feeding them out of the hay nets. But that said, I hang their hay nets at a height where their heads are lower than their withers. So I don't like to put the hay nets on the ground around here because we have fire ants, and often, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, we have a fair amount of rain, and when it rains, the fire ants will tend to crawl into whatever is dry, and that often is the hay net. So I want the hay nets off the ground, and I don't hang them high. So they're hung where their horses' poles are slightly below the withers, down to, let's say, cannon bone height. And as I'm sitting here watching Natia right now, her head is on absolutely straight, beautiful little stretching arched neck onto the hay net, and she's pulling straight up. I have seen them eat, kind of pull from the side of the hay net, but what I've observed is they pull kind of equally one side, then they fling it around, pull from the other side. So I personally have not observed any negative postures associated with eating out of the hay nets. And here's another benefit to hay nets, because I know a lot of people will use some sort of slow feeder station, right, where you put the hay in and then there's a cover that has either, mesh or small holes, and they eat out of the top of it. So I've seen some of those, and they look really nice, and they're tempting, but they can be a little bit pricey, and what I've seen is that they tend to be put in a certain area, and then that's where they sit. And so a maybe unintended consequence of that is that they just have a feed station, and the food is always there. So one thing, hi sweetie, did Solana just steal your hay net? Well, there's another one over there, my girl. Oh, now Solana's back for more attention. Okay, Natia, now's your chance. Solana's like, I want the hay, but I want the attention even more. Does that feel good? I know. So anyway, so an unintended consequence of maybe just having a feed station is the lack of variety. So when I think about horses' natural lifestyle and then the lifestyle that we give them, what they quickly use is this freedom and choice. Now they're free, they're turned out, but the amount of freedom and the amount of choice they have is fairly quickly limited in most places. Even if you have a big pasture, if it's the same big pasture, then it's the same big pasture, and horses get to know it pretty quickly. So my horses live, like I said, the track is around about a 5-acre field, and it has squiggly lines, it has sun spots, it has shady spots. The other pastures are kind of big 10-acre squares. And then I have my main area, which is where the barn and the house are. That's about 15 acres, well, that's about another 10 acres. And that has a little more variety because they can go around the barn or behind the arena or in the woods, things like that. So as much as possible, I try to vary where my horses are. So even though the girls have their track, the boys have the other pastures, I will purposefully alternate who goes where. Now I started doing this when I was moving a lot with them, and there was a certain point in my life where I was moving, and kind of every few months I'd end up somewhere else with my horses. And I noticed, every time you go to a new area, they kind of light up and they're like, woo, what's happening? Which makes sense. But then when I bought my place and I stayed in one place for a while, I started noticing like, oh, I haven't seen that little excitement in their face for a while. And then I would switch who's in which pasture, or if they're all together, I just move them to a different area, just for the sake of variety alone. It was not convenient for me. It kind of broke up my routine. Maybe I had to go a little further to feed them. But when I did that, the light came back on again. Oh, there's a rainbow. There's a rainbow that's landing in my boys' field right pretty much on top of Ovation. Anyway, so the light would go back on. So I purposefully mix it up. So they might go in one pasture overnight, then in the morning out in the main area, then in the afternoon I'll put them back in a different pasture. So again, it makes it a little bit chaotic around here for the people that help me. However, I see the change in my horse's eyes, and it just makes sense. We know variety turns on the nervous system in a different way. It's going to turn on the investigative. Even if it's the same pasture, they like it's this one or that one, it changes it up because maybe they had made plans for that afternoon, and now the plans are different. Who knows what it's like to be a horse? Maybe they like a particular area with a particular kind of grass at a particular time of day, and then I changed it. And so now they got to go seeking a different area. So that's one example, but how did I get there from hay nets? Well, when I have individual hay nets, we get to play the game of hide the hay net. So every time we put the hay nets out, instead of just going to a feeding station, we hang them up in random areas around the track. And I say random, but there's actually a little bit of thought to it. So if you just do it randomly, humans are not good at random. So if you don't put any thought into it, well, maybe I'll say it this way. If I don't put any thought into it, and I just go hang the hay nets without having an intention, chances are they will start ending up in the exact same place every time. Humans, like most animals, are pattern animals, and we tend to seek efficiency in what we do, most of us. So what I noticed is if I don't think about it, it ends up the same, and it's mindless. And so if it ends up the same, then the horses are just like little robots, and they go to the hay net. And they kind of work their life around it. They have all the politics worked out, right? Natia gets this hay net, Cora gets that hay net, and they just go to their hay nets and they eat. Again, I see the change in the look in the eye. So I don't like that been there, done that look in my horse's eyes. So when I hang the hay nets, I have some choices. I can put them, all of them far away from the water, right? So there's two water sources, but they're actually fairly close together. So I can put them all down at the other side, which I know will cause them to cover a little more ground every day as they go make the march to the water. I can put them all in the shade or the sun, so depending on the weather I might make decisions. But then I can also do what I call social grazing or independent grazing, or I might do political challenge grazing. So if I put them randomly spaced, let's say I have the 3 horses and I have the 3 hay nets out, which is what it is right now, I could put them sort of equidistant, and then the horses will either have to be independent and go spread out and be alone as they eat their hay, or if they want to be together, then they're going to have to do some politics, right? They're going to have to figure out, are they going to share that one hay net? Are they going to take turns? Are they going to negotiate and spar to get access to that hay net? How's that going to work? So normal horse behavior, knowing that they all know they could just walk a little bit and go find another hay net. So it's not like I'm throwing them into this situation that's going to cause them to resource guard, and cause frustration and anxiety. But they can make some decisions, and I think it's really interesting to see how they make those decisions. Because one day, based on mood, I'll see them all hanging around one hay net, and they take turns. Or I see them hanging around one hay net and they're like constantly pushing each other on and off of it. Or they're around one hay net and one is eating and the other 2 are sleeping. And then later I'll look out, maybe one's at the hay net and the other 2 have wandered off and found their respective hay nets. Sometimes I'll put the hay nets close together so that they can all line up and have their own hay net and be together. And sometimes when I do that, they each pick a hay net and they socially eat together. And sometimes one is off way across on the other side of the track, just having a little nap in the sun, totally isolated, away from the other horses, away from the hay. So I guess you get the idea that there's some changes, and I'm sure in every situation they're having to think a little bit differently. They're assessing, what mood are they in? What do they want that day? And it changes. It's got to change day to day. That's what I've seen. It's not like Solana always gets the hay net and everybody else always goes away. Sometimes they choose to be together and sometimes they choose to be apart while eating or not while eating. But if I didn't move the hay nets around like that, I wonder if that part of their brain would just kind of stop working, because it didn't have to. They didn't have to think about that. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, and then to think about that same idea and sort of go big picture and say, well, I wonder where else things like that are happening. I wonder where else we make it efficient and easy for our horses, and in making it efficient and easy, we turn off parts of their brain. I mean, I think this happens in a way, hi Natia, I came over to visit you. I think this happens in a way physically. If you think about the high-end dressage facilities with the perfect footing, so the horses never have to step over, a pebble or move from one surface to another. They have the surface of the rubber floored barn to the shaving stall to the fluffy arena, and that's about it. And think about what happens to their proprioception and their coordination and nimbleness and agility if that's all that they're exposed to. So that's the nervous system. And I really experienced that when I first broke out of the normal dressage world and spent some time. I'm actually with the Pirellis and doing natural horsemanship, and I followed them to Colorado. There was one young dressage horse that I had in training, and he was a little scary to ride freestyle on grass because he would trip a lot. And so you can think that the answer to that would be to keep him organized and just make sure I ride him on good footing. Or you could do what I ended up doing, which is going, well, I shouldn't have to hold you up. You need to practice on irregular footing without me getting in your way so that you can find your coordination, find your balance, and just get your proprioception and nervous system and nimbleness worked out. And so that's what I did. And yeah, it took a little bit of courage because he did stumble a lot. But at the end of that summer, he was so much more athletic and so much more alive. And, I'm not a neurobiologist, but I think the brain is so plastic and everything is connected to everything in the nervous system. So I think if we shut down one area and teach it that it doesn't have to think and it doesn't have to figure things out, it's so easy to get into a pattern of that in general. They don't problem solve here or there, so they don't problem solve anywhere. I wonder if maybe a similar example is, I don't know if that sound's picking up, but I'm combing Mattia's tail as I'm talking to you. Oh, now I lost my train of thought. Something about figuring things out. Oh, yeah, so I wonder if it's related to the same thing that happens with feeding time, right? So most barns have a specific feeding time, and if you don't feed them at that time, then the horses get frustrated because they're in that pattern, and now that pattern is not serving them because it's either it's working or they're frustrated and anxious. Where if you make a pattern of not having a regular feeding time to that precision, horses usually they're like, look at their clock, it's usually about the time, never mind, and they go away. Now, of course, my horses are out, so if I don't come at the normal time, they just go back to grazing. They've got their forage. So you see all these things start to add up when you think about horse care and horse keeping. And of course, they have to be fed on time because if they've been locked in a stall and they don't have hay, then yeah, you want to get them. You don't want to wait another hour. You got to get some forage in their bellies. However, if you use that argument as a reason why to have a set feeding time, then really the solution should be feed them in such a way where they have not run out of hay by the morning. Right? So there's all these little things that sort of collide together, and you make one decision and you stick with it, and that creates another consequence that you maybe didn't think of or maybe didn't connect, and that's causing other consequences. And so now you've got a horse who's running out of food at night and then is frustrated and anxious if you're even 10 minutes late, and that's creating anxiety. And now you have a horse that has not developed the capacity or the ability to practice being a little bit adaptable, right? So most of nature, except for the sun up and sun down, doesn't really work on a schedule. You find food when you find food. So when we bring horses into our human lifestyle, I think we have to really watch that the things that we think make us efficient as humans might be making our horses less adaptable, less resilient. I have a podcast on resiliency, less plastic and able to cope with figuring things out and being okay. So I don't know. I don't know if feeding your horses on a regular schedule makes it harder for them to train because they can't practice working through frustration or being patient. I don't know, but I think it's interesting to think about. And for sure, if you have a horse that's having issues with monotony or boredom, you might look outside the training plan and go, where else can I practice having him light up in his life? Simply because of how and when you place your heinous. I think that's interesting. Oh, Solana's back. She says, I'm a little jealous. Hi, sweet pea. Hi, crows. What do you think, Solana? Best sound in the world. Horses eating. All right, I'll see you later, sweetie. Well, that was sort of interesting. I didn't know I was going to come out here and talk about heinous and feeding time. But I think it's good to kind of sit back and soak in the big picture of everything that you're doing, your horse's whole experience. You know, when I think about creating happy horses and happy athletes, you know, a lot of times the focus is just on what are we doing with them? How are we training them? How are we, you know, using our aids and using timing and things like that? But for me, the thinking about your horse being happy has to start when you're not around. What is your horse's life like when you're not around? How can we make that happier? I mean, if your horse is just sitting in a stall, then when you come around, like you're a highlight. Hopefully you're a highlight, not a, oh no, this is the worst part of the day. So you have an opportunity to be like the most interesting thing that happens to them all day. But that's a lot of pressure also. Like, oh my goodness, all that frustration, all that boredom, all that pent up energy, like we got to deal with all that now. So I try to think about how happy is my horse when I'm not out there? Are they walking around each day going, life's pretty good? Or are they walking around each day going, same old square of dirt, same old square of dirt, same old square of dirt? You know, forage, freedom, friends, it's always a really good place to start with your horses, because just having the freedom and the friends gives us some variety by nature. But a lot of times we don't have them in ideal horsey situations. We're doing the best with what we can. We're at other people's facilities. But I think the thing is, there's often more choices than we think. And it just takes a little bit of thinking sometimes. Hi, crow. So those are the sorts of things I think about when I wander out to brush my horse's mane and tail. And I'm walking. It is springtime here in Florida, and it's very confusing to me because the oak trees here in Florida lose their leaves in the spring. So every spring, the leaves fall out of the trees, land on the ground, and this sound of leaves, walking through dry leaves, just brings me right back to New York. I grew up in New York. So every bit of my cellular biology says it's autumn. It's September. And then I have to remind myself, no, we just went through winter. And then my brain goes, you call that winter? That wasn't winter. Yeah, it's even more evidence that it's the fall. It's just the most confusing time of the year for me, every single time. It is spring. Hi, crow. All right, well, I'm going to let you go. Let me know if you enjoyed the walk and talk, the musing with my horses. Maybe I'll take you on some walks again.